A November 2019 trip report. First, let me start by saying that I'm not blaming this specific strain for my terrible time. It just happens to be the strain I was on when I was arrested. My parents went out of town on vacation, so 3 friends, my girlfriend and I, decided to take about 2 grams of penis envy each. I am not super experienced with psychedelics. I have taken acid at most 2 tabs, maybe a dozen times, but this was only my second real shroom trip. We decided to grind up the shrooms and drink them with orange juice, which was not bad. We took them around 9:30 at night, and literally 10 minutes later, I felt it kicking in. I decided to take a shower, and by the time I got out, I was higher than I have ever been before. I could still control myself, but I knew that it was going to be an intense trip. My back always hurts when I trip, so I bought some icy hot in advance to rub on my back, and for some reason thought it was a good idea to rub it all over my body. This made me freak out, and I tried to wash it off, but that did not help. I laid down on the floor in my room and just stared at the ceiling until my girlfriend and friends came in and laid down with me. Everyone else was having a very intense trip as well, since most had only done acid maybe twice before. I remember feeling like a worm digging around in the ground, and that's the last thing I truly remember from that night. Apparently, at some point, I looked at my door and said, "Oh my God, Dad?" I've never met my father before, and ran out of my room into the garage. My girlfriend was the only one who noticed, so she followed me and spent the rest of the night trying to help me. I went into my garage and took off my shirt and started pissing myself. I remember thinking that if I peed my pants, then nothing was real, since no sane person would pee themselves. At that point, I ran outside and got completely naked, which I don't remember doing at all. I ran all around my neighborhood, banging on windows and yelling at the top of my lungs. My GF tried to stop me and drag me inside, but I kept resisting and running away. Keep in mind, she was just as high as I was and couldn't think of how to properly help. I know I should have had a trip sitter, and that was my biggest mistake. I kept thinking I was God and started speaking in binary code, and at one point, I remember thinking I was Steve Jobs and kept talking about how I wasn't really a human and that I was a machine who created the simulation we think is life. The scariest thing that happened, though, is that I remember getting hit by a car and dying. I was sitting in the road naked, and a car sped around a corner very fast and was driving at me, but at the last second I ran out of the way and they yelled at me as they drove by. However, I started reliving that same moment over and over. I would teleport back into the road, and the car would get close to me, and at the last second I would run out of the road. But one time, as the car drove at me, I saw someone walk up to me. It was me. I was sitting in the road, looking at myself, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, "You have to do it this time." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "You have to let the car hit you this time. You have to die." I told the version of myself I was looking at that I was scared and wasn't sure if I wanted to die yet. So he responded, "The longer you wait, the more you are going to suffer." So this time, as the car got closer, I forced myself to stay sitting in the road. As it got right in my face, I was yelling at the top of my lungs, and then everything went white, and it was quiet. When I opened my eyes, cops were walking towards me and picked me up off the ground. I don't remember being put in handcuffs, but I thought the police were clones of myself, and I thought I was being accepted into heaven. My girlfriend was also arrested, and that was the last I saw her until I made bail. Once I was in the cop car, I thought I was the world's best magician, and that this was my final trick. I thought that it was my destiny to break out. and that if I didn't, I would spend the rest of my eternity locked in the back of a cop car. It took the cops a while to get into the car because they were questioning my girlfriend about what was happening since I was making no sense whatsoever. Once they got in the car and started driving, I thought I was Michael Jackson, and I started apologizing for touching little kids and started doing his famous voice sounds. When I got to the police station, I remember thinking I was in Austin, Texas, which is 6 hours away from where I live. They put me in a jumpsuit and started strapping me to a chair. They said at this point I spit on them and headbutted one of the officers. However, I don't remember doing this, and there is no video evidence of it. They put a spit sack on my head, and at this point, I thought I was the Zodiac Killer, and I was being taken to the electric chair. Naturally, I started freaking out and screaming and thrashing around until they put me into a detox cell. This is where I spent the rest of my night until I came down. But the entire time I was in there, I thought I was going to be in there forever and would not stop screaming and crying. This is honestly one of the most embarrassing things that have ever happened, even though I understand I was in an altered state of mind. I was charged with a public intoxication and assault on a peace officer. I have gotten the public intoxication dismissed, but probably won't go to trial for the assault for a while. I've been sober since and do not plan on taking any psychedelics anytime soon, and I definitely will take better precautions next time I do. But I'm wondering what exactly made me act this way, since I have never done anything remotely related to this while tripping before. Could it be that I underestimated the potency of the penis envy? Because I've heard they are much stronger than normal shrooms, but I'm not sure how true that is. However, I had a friend who took 6 grams of the exact same batch and said he had a great and calm time. I know the mushrooms themselves did not make me act out, but does anyone else have any crazy experiences?